It has now been over a year since the murder of the Idaho State University students Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Kaylee Goncalves, and Madison Mogen. This has got to be very difficult on the families of the four. Not only has it been over a year, but at this time, there is no trial date scheduled, even though the court continues to wrangle over a number of issues. Now, there are those out there who say Bryan Kohberger is innocent. There are those out there in the legacy media saying Bryan Kohberger is guilty, and here's why. So people down in the comments section here often ask me, where do you stand? Well, as an attorney and someone who has researched the case a fair amount, I am more than willing, ready, and able to grant Mr. Kohberger his constitutionally afforded right to a presumption of innocence. However, that doesn't mean we don't see some red flags in the case. What are those red flags? Here are 5 of them.
There's been a lot of developments in the Kohberger case, but as more and more information comes out, more and more red flags start to appear. I'm Lainey Law.
And I'm attorney Andrew Myers.
In this episode, we're going to be discussing 5 red flags about the Kohberger case. Now, Andrew, we have done so many videos on this topic, and people keep asking for more and more. And this really seems like an endless rabbit hole of facts. So what do you have in store for us today?
Well, you're right. I mean, it has been kind of endless. We started off with these, 5 things about the case, and I wanted really to move on because, as you know, I've been working on some other cases. We've done some other cases, the Delphi case and some others. I have 2 others that I'm working on right now, but the comments keep, going on and on and on, and there's just so much about this case that I have a feeling we could do 5 more every week. It is, as you say, it's a deep rabbit hole, but so getting tired of calling it 5 questions this week, it's red flags because you look at the case. I look at it from both lenses as a defense attorney, but also thinking, what does the prosecutor think? I've known some prosecutors in the past fairly well, so what are they thinking? And the more and that's analytical thinking, being able to see things from both sides. And the more I do look at it, and the more our commenters point us in various directions, most of them politely, but some not so much, as we'll see later, the more I see. So, all right, you said, why don't we jump right into it? So I'm sorry that I did not do that. And here we go. The 5th red flag of 5 is that the Goncalves family held off on having a funeral over fears that the murderer might show up. And now, from a personal, emotional point of view, sure. Steve Goncalves, father of Kaylee Goncalves, said he believes the sick and twisted killer could come back to a service hidden among mourners as he lurks in plain sight. And part of the reason we didn't have a funeral, he says, is because she, Christy, the mother, couldn't be guaranteed that the monster, and those are her words, was not going to be there. He told ABC News earlier in the week. And, the reason that that's significant is, you can understand they didn't want the monster there. But at the same time, the psychologists will tell you that there's a phenomenon amongst criminals, arsonists particularly, but also murderers, to return to the scene of the crime. Arsonists are often caught in the crowd of people looking at a fire. And murderers, if you look at serial murderers over the years, they not only take prizes from the crime scene, but they also at times return or even go to the funeral to see, as sick as this sounds, but it's a psychological phenomenon. They'll actually go to a funeral. So this was an opportunity that the FBI was ready, willing, and able to take their little mini cameras and be non-obtrusive and be in another room. So nobody would even know that they were there, but they could scan the room for those who, were not loved ones, who were not known well to the family. And, even if it was somebody that was known, the FBI profilers would have had an opportunity to take a look and see. So that's, an opportunity that was missed in this case.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that it's significant that they missed this opportunity at a funeral instead of, say, like, the vigil at the school and, any potential to find any video evidence there, and do you think the video evidence would have been helpful?
Well, the issue with the vigil is that it was huge. I mean, the University of Idaho did, in fact, hold a vigil because the whole campus was most of the kids knew the four, but even if you didn't know them, this was such a horrible experience. I mean, imagine if at your college, and I went to a small undergrad college, and if this had happened, I'm just thinking at my undergrad school, we would have all been devastated. And that was the fact in Idaho. So the vigil was huge, and it doesn't present the same opportunity just because there are so many people at a vigil as opposed to a funeral, which is a much more intimate is the word event.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know, it's interesting to think about when you're recording things like that a lot of the time. I don't know, it's interesting when you put someone, obviously, who's capable of doing this among a room with however many people. If you can get them kind of in a smaller area, maybe you do get to kinda see some kind of behaviors and mannerisms. I'm not, a behavioral psychologist, and I can't identify someone like this, like we talked about before. Nobody can really see someone, a murderer, before it comes a lot of the time. It's you would never expect to be on the same bus with
Right.
them or anything.
Right.
So, it is interesting to think about what someone with more knowledge could discern from watching people's
Right.
behavior.
Well, the FBI does have people, and I know I've badmouthed the FBI for other reasons in the past, but they do have people that are pretty good at that. Let's move along to the fourth red flag, number four, and that is that so many people went into this crime scene before law enforcement was even called. And yeah, I know we've talked about that 8-hour delay, but it is very significant. According to authorities, two of the surviving roommates of the victims summoned friends to the residence because they believed one of the second floor victims had passed out and was not waking up. Now, this is the Independent over in the UK on November 21st. Not even 10 days after the November 13th crime. The newspaper over in the UK, not in the United States, but over in the UK, is saying so many people were at that crime scene. They were summoned to the residence before the police. So now, a month after the crimes, the Moscow, Idaho Police Department on December 19th finally issued some information, including that at 11:58 a.m. on the day of the crime, a 911 call requested aid for an unconscious person. The call was made from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones inside the residence. Multiple people talked with the 911 dispatcher before Moscow police arrived at that location. Now, that's significant because a lot of people have bickered about what happened, Dylan Mortensen this and Bethany Funk that. Forget all of that, because the real significance here is that the murders are said to have taken place between 4:06 and 4:20, I think the timeline had said, and then the police were called at 11:58. That's 7-8 hours that, forget about Dylan and forget about Bethany. That's 7 or 8 hours that the crime scene just festered with other people walking around. And so that is going to be an evidentiary issue at the trial. It just is.
Mhm. That is something to think about. It just makes me wanna scream. I mean, it could be said that they didn't know the severity of the situation, but I don't know. The fact that they're having a medical emergency and calling their friends, and people are coming over to this place when, medical emergency, the first thing you do if you're concerned should be call 911 and not try to get a bunch of college students to come deal with the situation. But, college students do stupid things. Do we know how many people were at the scene contaminating it?
No, and that's the problem. We don't know. They called their friends, and the photograph that we showed before showed some people on the back porch talking to the police. And I mean, so then even after 11:58, when the police did respond, then the police, just kind of hang around and watch and invite the people in. I mean, no, that's not what happens in a professional crime investigation. The local police immediately seal the scene off. they just immediately seal it off, keep people away until the investigation team, often the state police, but in other jurisdictions it might be others. But there are also, in many jurisdictions, there is a crime scene response of professionals that are ready 24/7. They could be sitting around the Christmas tree opening their presents. They get the call. They're the professionals that go in. So the local police are supposed to throw everybody out, seal the scene, put up that tape, and just stand. And I've seen this happen. Actually, I've actually, sadly, seen it happen in the town that I live in, and that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to move on to number 3?
Yeah.
Number 3 is another horrible circumstance that reduces relevant evidence in the case. And that is that 5 vehicles were towed from the King Road home to a city lot to be stored. They were previously searched and are, quote, still part of the crime scene, police said. And that's the Moscow, Idaho police. And you see them. That's the 5 vehicles that you can see here. I'll make it a little bit bigger so that you can see them. And we don't know precisely whose they were, but there were 4 people that lost their lives, and we know that Kaylee had just bought a big SUV, so that's probably one of them there. But who owned the other one? The relevance here is that they sat there in that lot, and then it was November, December, January. What happens in the United States in the northern part of the country? It snows. So this isn't me saying it. Joseph Scott Morgan, one of the nation's leading forensic experts, said police should expect that any trace evidence not collected from the exteriors of the vehicles is gone. You've got snow and all kinds of debris. Anything that wasn't collected prior to that is gone. Footprints, latent prints, all that is compromised. So, another missed opportunity in this case that could have resulted in more relevant evidence, and it's gone. Not good,
Mm-hmm. It's wild to think that they took 5 of the cars. What do you think the 5th car could have been?
Well, I don't know if it was Ethan, or remember, Ethan has a twin brother,
Mhm.
and also a sister. He was triplets. He had a brother and a sister. Maybe it was Ethan. Maybe it was one of the other kids. I would guess, but I don't know. I mean, I'm speculating here. Maybe, would Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, if they had cars, would they have been allowed to take their cars, or would the police nab those? So no, we don't know. And I've dug into it a little bit, and if anybody knows whose cars they were, it'll be a red flag for another episode, and we'll dig into it and figure it out. But no, we don't know.
I feel like the sleuths in the comments already know that answer. I feel like there surely has to be people that have been digging and digging and digging. I feel like that's probably over 20 hours of research on its own, but I feel like somebody's gonna come with us with alleged facts. We can't trust the comments, but
Yeah, we have to. I like the commenters, but we always check stuff out. You can't just and this number 3 flag indicates. Joseph Scott Morgan is a leading forensics expert. I've seen him on. You watch the various podcasts and TV shows. We're not going to mention any of Court TV, but anyhow, you see him all around these various sources being quoted, and the guy knows what he's talking about. And if he says that evidence has been lost, I believe him. So anyhow, okay, let's take a look at number 2. We're getting there. Number 2 is there's another gap. I mean, everybody looks at that 7 or 8 hour gap between the time the crimes were allegedly committed and 11:58 or noon when the police were called. But there's another gap if you stop and think about it, and that is that on November 29th of 2022, and this is right in the probable cause affidavit if you look at it, November 29th, 2022, Washington State University officer D. Tiengo identified the Hyundai Elantra registered to Mr. Kohberger. So, they had been looking at, if you look later on in the probable cause affidavit, they'd been looking around. They'd seen this suspect vehicle number 1 leaving the scene and driving around here and there. So now they finally, with the help of the FBI, they find an Elantra on November 29th, not that long after the crimes. Then, same day, Moscow Police Department officer B. Payne. And by the way, that's the guy who wrote the probable cause affidavit. He examines the license and they find a photograph showing Bryan Kohberger as a white male, 6 feet, 185 pounds, bushy eyebrows, which that matches what the PCA described this guy as Dylan Mortensen explained the guy dressed in a face mask and black clothing. So November 29th, 2022, they've kind of got a person of interest. You have to at least call him that. What happens? Not until December 27th, when they tailed him across country, approximately 2,500 miles to Pennsylvania. Only then is a trash sample taken after they track him over to Pennsylvania. And only then is DNA sample taken from the trash cans. Remember the whole thing about the trash was dumped in the neighbor's trash bin next door, and the police in Pennsylvania grabbed that trash, and the DNA was tied to Mr. Kohberger's father. And only then did law enforcement obtain a warrant for the no-knock dynamic entry where they went in the middle of the night. So, I mean, there's a 28-day gap. What were they doing, guys? What were they doing? I mean, that to me, that's really relevant.
Now, there's two questions that I'm curious about right now. And I do want to point out it's funny that it was like the neighbor's trash, because even if, you're not doing anything suspicious, I think that's still technically a crime because it's not your trash. But so he kind of implicated himself there on grounds of arrest, I guess. But so I have two questions for you.
Yeah. What's that?
Why is a 28-day gap significant in the first place in the grand scheme of things? And two, would they have not done like an interrogation on him if he had been a suspect prior to that? Or do you think it's because they are trying not to tip him off? Don't they, like, wouldn't it benefit them to ask some questions?
Okay, if I can remember them both, let me take the first question. The first question first. The relevance of the 28-day gap is that, when they did finally get Mr. Kohberger and they did finally take a very close, detailed look at his car, they took it to the garage lab and they went through it. Absolutely no DNA of the Idaho 4 victims were in that vehicle. So that was an extra 28 days that Mr. Kohberger, with his knowledge as a criminology student, could wipe down the interior of the car. I mean, don't tell me that somebody that, if he did it and he's only a suspect, but don't tell me that someone who has committed 4 brutal murders with a huge knife leaves the scene and doesn't leave some DNA in his car, because I won't believe that. I don't think any reasonable juror will believe it either, which is more relevant than me believing anything. So we had 28 days to clean out that car. And if he is the subject, he sure did a good job, didn't he? And I forget, I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Well, wouldn't they, the second question, I think you did a good job at answering the first one, but the second question was if he was a suspect in that whole month period that it's surprising to me, I guess, that they wouldn't have interrogated him, asked him some questions about the whole situation and things like that.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, right when the officers in late November, pegged him as a person of interest, that's the first thing in the criminal investigation textbook they should have done. Asked him to come in and talk. And as you know from following true crime, a lot of times people do talk to their own disadvantage, but they do talk. So that's something that law enforcement should, if they're going by the book, they should at least do. They didn't. Now, if he properly took his Fifth Amendment right, and he didn't talk, there are still other things they could do. They could have watched him a lot more closely. Why follow him 2,500 miles away to Pennsylvania and go through his trash there? Why not tail him in Washington? They knew where he worked. They knew where he taught classes. They knew where he went to school. Later on, they figured out what stores he went to. Don't forget that the Long Island serial killer and others, but the Long Island serial killer was nabbed because he was a person of interest, and they discreetly started following him, and he went into New York City where he worked, and he threw a pizza box in the trash. And so the investigators discreetly, waited until he was out of the picture. They grabbed that pizza box, and bada bing, bada boom, the DNA people found his DNA on that pizza box, and that is what led to his arrest. So why didn't the people out in Idaho do that?
Yeah, and like you said, you said, it's just like, why didn't they do that? Wouldn't it have been a lot easier to get the DNA like sooner? And also on top of that, like, I don't know, even things just like cars. If he has his car, I would imagine that if he uses his car, goes inside a building, I'm not a forensic analysis or anything, but wouldn't you be able to swab something like a car handle, I imagine, and get that DNA?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is not uncommon at all. As you know, I do podcasts now, but for a decade before I did the podcast, I was an active blogger. I don't do the blogs anymore because fewer and fewer, sadly, people read anymore. But one of my earlier blogs that I did was that a guy was convicted of murder for spitting on the sidewalk, and the fact that was the headline. And if you read into the article, what had happened was a similar situation early on in the whole DNA establishment of that science. And as you know, it hasn't been around forever, but early on in the establishment of DNA as evidence in various cases, there was a guy who was in fact a suspect. There were facts that led the law enforcement to want to follow him, but they didn't have enough evidence to draw up a warrant and arrest him. So they tailed him. They tailed him around and tailed him around, and he spit on the sidewalk. And as gross as this is, he spit on the sidewalk. When he was out of the scene, the law enforcement went in with their Q-tips or whatever, more official thing they use. They took their official Q-tips. They took it to the lab. Sure enough, that was him. Sure enough, they had enough for a warrant now. And sure enough, he was convicted. But this happens frequently in crime. People have thrown a cigarette on the sidewalk and just, there's enough DNA on your cigarette butt that you throw on the sidewalk. People have been convicted on that. So it's a fairly well-known thing. If I knew it 10 years ago when I wrote that blog article, why didn't the police do that? So that 28-day gap really represents as much, if not more, of a big, huge hole in this Idaho 4 case than the 8-hour gap. That's my contention anyhow.
I'm dying to know what was in that trash that had to go to the neighbor's house.
Oh, there was all kinds of stuff. There was that's just, all kinds of just trash stuff that they threw out. But that is what pegged him. So let's go to number one. What is the number one red flag that we see in this case? And I think number one is kind of an obvious, conclusion to this whole series, and that is that, was the local police department really up to the major league challenge of this case? Sadly, we have to ask that question. The roughly 30 members of the Moscow Police Department all initially responded to the crime scene with no dedicated public information staff within the department. That's according to Aaron Snell of the Idaho State Police. You can go online, and at various times, the Moscow Police Department had 37 officers, 34 officers, 36 officers. And a former FBI agent was quoted. This isn't me saying this. I'm not pulling this stuff out of whole cloth. A former FBI guy said, quote, "I think the Moscow Police Department is in over its head. They don't have the resources to properly address this type of crime." And that's Peter Yashmetz, a former FBI agent and security consultant, from the New York Post, December 14th, 2022. He's a lead he pointed out, one of the points that he made was that the lead investigators in this case had only 2 years of experience. And it's like, we all need to get our experience somewhere. We all need to get our experience somewhere, but you don't put the rookie on, on the World Series team. And it's sad, but it's true. So no apologies for that one.
I mean, like you said, it's just like you don't put the rookie in charge, even with a college degree. It's just like a college degree you can it takes 2 years to get in the first place, and when you get a college degree and associates, you still don't know anything. You can get a college degree, get a bachelor's, still not know anything. Obviously, when you go to work, you get a lot of different hands-on experience, but there's a huge difference as to what you're gonna know 2 years working a job versus 10 years working a job and really specializing in things. And 30 people for a house responding to that sounds like kind of a crazy stampede. I mean, like you mentioned, there were people at the house that they had to get rid of and secure the area and stuff like that, but it all just sounds kind of like a mess.
Yeah, the state that I'm most familiar with, the state police are responsible for all major crimes, including murder. And as I indicated before, when there's something like this that happens, I mean, it's just protocol to make sure the scene is sealed off. I mean, imagine the poor officer. I was thinking about this before. Imagine the poor officer. It's a Sunday morning at 11:58. You know, it's a cold November day, cold gray November day, and he gets a call that there's an unconscious person. Well, the police department's in a college town. He's in a college town. He's figuring, oh, it's probably a college student that's passed out. You know, I'll go over there, call the EMTs, bada bing, bada boom, done. So he walks into the scene and he finds 4 bodies slashed up with a knife. So, you know, at that point, you know, obviously the officer he's the one that's in the frozen shock phase, I would suggest. And he's the one that should immediately just say, everybody out. Bethany, Dylan, your friends, everybody out. I'm even getting out. We're locking down the scene. We're putting up the police tape. I'm calling in for backup. And the officers that come over there, they're only there to put the crime scene tape up. And we're all standing outside of the building, keeping it pristine as we can until the homicide investigators get here. That's how these things are done. And I just imagine that it's kind of sad that, you know, the initial officers didn't have the training to handle this property. So, you know,
Mhm.
and you know, the not funny, but the sad thing is that a lot of this comes from newspapers over in the UK, the Independent and the Daily Mirror. It's not coming from the newspapers in Idaho and Washington State. And the reason for that is that if you're a reporter, and I know I was in that business for 10 years before I went to law school, you need your sources. You need your sources. And so the locals, and even some of the, you know, major national people, you know, they so much want to have that news alert or that exclusive. I'm so and so, such and such, sitting in my nice warm studio in New York. We have an exclusive. Well, they depend on sources to give them those exclusives. So they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. They're not going to be critical. And I'm really shocked. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm really shocked that the newspapers and other media in Idaho and Washington State haven't been more aggressive at working this story around the edges and trying to find out what really happened and being more critical of law enforcement. But it's just the
Mhm.
way it is, you know. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, I don't know, the whole thing sounds really chaotic. I still am not over the fact that, there's potentially a medical emergency and all of a sudden there's how many, people, 20-year-olds in there running around, potentially unaware, most likely unaware of the situation and contaminating the crime scene. All that being said, though,
Mhm.
we've been getting some comments on our YouTube channel. Do we have some comments that we would like to read today?
Yes, we do. Do you have the comments in front of you? Do you want
I
to start or should I?
do.
Okay, why don't you
Let's
start?
I'll let you start.
Okay. All right. So, this number one comment that I'm going to take a look at right now is from, I think it's Robert Wattis, and I apologize if I messed up your name. He says police are claiming that they were not going to use IgG, that's the investigative genetic genealogy, because it was not paramount to probable cause. If this was true, then there is nothing else included in the probable cause affidavit that they didn't know after 2 weeks when they ran Brian's plates at the school. So why would they not have, at a minimum, questioned him? That's what we were just saying. They gave him all the time in the world and let him leave the state. There is no reasonable explanation why they would not have let him leave the state. According to them, they had the suspicious car and driver matched supposed description. And they did nothing? No, especially since the FBI was involved. Thank you, Robert. Good comment.
Yeah, and next comment I have Laureen, and like we said before, we're probably butchering everybody's name, so we apologize. But Shemerda 4743, I agree with Andrew on everything. His questions make a lot of sense, and are not getting the answers is very shady. I watched Unfiltered Lucky yesterday, and his video was also very good. He went back to all the interviews from the beginning before Bryan was arrested and the gag orders, especially the Goncalves family, and he brought up many interesting facts, not speculations, that a lot of us either forgot or they didn't register. Andrew, please keep up your 5 questions. If you run out of ideas, I'm sure I and many others can give you a lot of questions. And I do want to say thank you, Laureen, our first member. Thank you so much. We're still getting everything set up, but we appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm relatively new to this whole process, as you know. So, what do we give her? Do we give her like a teddy bear?
So,
thank you, Lorene. I don't mean to make light, but thank you.
Yeah, with the members right now, we don't have any hard benefits set up for them. But before the year is over, we would like to get you guys some custom badges. We're going to get you some custom emojis that you can leave in the comments and stuff like that. And like I mentioned before, we're still new to the whole YouTube members. So let us know if you want like an additional members only video, or maybe, well, right now we don't have many members to do members only podcast, but maybe members videos or maybe early access. We're gonna have to look into that a little bit more and see what we can offer you, but we are very grateful. Thank you so much to our first member.
Yes, and please, a famous politician, Tip O'Neill, said that all politics are local, and also he ran into a lady in the supermarket one time, and she said she didn't vote for him. And he said, "Why didn't you vote for him?" And he said, "You didn't ask for my vote." So the reason I told that totally irrelevant story is because we're asking you to please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. And that's why we just put that banner up. So here's some more comments. This one comes from Macy Gray 5240. She says, "Where's the actual evidence that one of the victims was stabbed over 50 times? Otherwise, hearsay and can't be relied upon as to your arguments." Well, I've answered this before, and the actual evidence is hearsay, but where it comes from is really early on, maybe a month or two out. A really good podcaster by the name of Annie Elise was digging into this, and she has a friend whose husband works for the FBI. And before the gag order came down, Annie Elise had a text from this friend, and she actually read it right on the podcast. And she read the text from the friend, and the husband had said that one of the victims was stabbed 54 times. And putting that together with the fact that early on it was said that Kaylee was the target. There was a target, and Kaylee appeared to be the target. We don't know, but it seems, putting 2 and 2 together, that she had 54 stab wounds. And that's where it comes from. And others have verified that. And yes, you're absolutely right. It is hearsay right now, today, prior to the trial. However, if they bring the coroner and or an FBI agent who was in the room during the autopsy, it's no longer hearsay. It's a direct observation. So that goes in with no credible objection. So that, I hope, handles that one for the last time. Your turn.
And yeah, well, I was gonna say, and for those unfamiliar, this is another true crime YouTuber with over 1 million subscribers. So although people on the internet can say whatever they want, that's a lot of reputation to kind of put on the line to just say something bogus.
Yep.
So Mary Burns, great work. Thank you so much, Mary Burns 3538. We appreciate it.
Oh, I thought you were doing those 2 brief ones.
I can. You want me to do the second one?
Sure, do the second one. I'm ready.
All right, so I will actually, let's see. I'll read these next 2 because they're kind of short. So we have You'll like Jackson 8855, which is, ugh, you're reading a dead hearse. But in the contrary, we have Doc JSW saying, many thanks for you and your panel's input on this case. Much appreciated. So we got kind of very contrasting opinions right there.
Well, we're beating a dead horse. I don't know. I'm an animal lover. I have a dog and a cat, and one of them's running around behind me. And I have friends that have horses, so I would never beat a dead. All right, you're being figurative. Okay, all right, I get it. Okay, so the next one that I have here is from D Toshi 415. My two questions are: how is a person that Chief Fry said wasn't a witness is now a witness? How is a survivor with questionable behavior defining a timeline? Note that one got 18 thumbs ups, and yeah, those are big questions. The commenter is talking about Dylan Mortensen. At first they were saying she wasn't a witness, then they were saying she was a witness, and that's something that they're going to have to answer to. And yes, she is. She's the one that's pretty much defining that timeline, other than the observations of the vehicles. So good one. Good catch. Thank you. Your turn.
Mm-hmm. So now I will read the next two because they both pertain to me. Woo! So we have Caddy Crime Ghoul, Lainey Law, cute pink mic. Thank you. It's a Blue Yeti. We love everything pink.
Yeah. I've never seen anything like that. Where did
actually Amazon? It's actually funny because a Blue Yeti was my first, microphone that I got, and I had a blue one. But when that one died after like 5 years, I went to go get it, and I saw they had a pink one. I'm like, we need to do it. I think it's a new option. I think it's kind of limited edition, so that was fun.
Most of the podcasters have these boring black ones, and so that's why I got a boring black one. And there's different ones, but I'm sorry about probably all the noise I've just created.
No.
Before I went to law school, I was in the broadcasting business, and Shure is a big name. So I just got a big, boring black one. Like, Mom, all the other kids have those, and so there it is. But yeah, so you're unique.
We're gonna have to spray paint yours blue and bedazzle it.
No, that's okay. No, we're leaving it black. It's staying that way. That's the way. But anyhow, I think it's kind of crazy when people put them right in the picture. It's like, I was always. When I was in the TV biz, we were taught to hide those things. And in fact, we do have lavalier microphones that you hide. So I find it funny that a lot of the podcasters, they've got to put it right in the picture to show they have a nice big mic. Because when I was in the TV biz, and I'm sorry, I apologize in advance for all the noise I'm about to make, but we were trained to keep things as normal as possible. So that's why I keep it down there. But I don't know why we went down that rabbit hole.
I love it. I mean, that is interesting to think about when you think about traditional media versus podcasting. It's almost like a flex.
I have a big mic. Look at my big mic.
Exactly. That's what everybody seems to be doing. Everybody wants to point out that they got their microphone.
But no, if you watch TV, which I guess fewer and fewer people do, they really hide the mics. I mean, when they do those sit downs, I'm old enough to remember Barbara Wawa. She would always have a mic hidden. Or if you watch TV news, a lot of times they have it, coming. They have the little wireless box taped to their belt or clipped to their belt, and then they fish the microphone up through their shirt, and it's in a discreet place. And it's funny when they turn around to say, look at the fire over there that I'm standing in front of, and then you see the little wireless box on the back of their belt. Both men and women, and it's just funny. But again, I'm sorry we went down that rabbit hole.
I'm gonna keep going down that rabbit hole. One last input is reality TV shows. When you see girls in like bikinis or just people in bathing suit, it's funny. Like you very clearly see the little box going down.
I think I did so. Okay, never mind. I thought I did something bad to my mic. Okay, we're back. Okay.
Broken forever.
No, I think. Okay, all right. So, okay.
Let's do our last comment, which is from Pearly Gates City. When you are gaming, you are putting yourself in another world. Gaming can be very isolating. Lainey cannot have said it any better. Thanks, girl. In fact, she seems to be an expert. In other words, gaming totally dissociates you, which most of us don't find healthy. Obviously, gaming is not going to bring healing. It will program her. My advice, if any like gaming, do volunteer work at an animal shelter or helping the elderly. And I I appreciate the kind words, everybody. Thank you. I saw someone comment on my hair a while back. Thank you. I see you. Love you. Shout out to everybody who says good things about us. And those of you who don't, if you still comment, we still, appreciate it. Give us the metrics. But yeah, I mean, I even still have my stack of games right here. I definitely agree that, while there can be some relaxing games, that's usually not like in the mainstream. And definitely how you say like it can program you. I would definitely say that not all the time, but and there's a lot of cases where people become a lot more bitter and hostile in gaming, and I do appreciate when I watch gamers, the people who are kind of positive and upbeat, and if it's a multiplayer game, not just straight up insulting the other person, which is a lot of what goes on in gaming, as I'm sure some people are familiar with.
Well, that's good insight. My entire experience with gaming is Word Womp. I don't even know if that's still around, but Word Womp was great. It's kind of like electronic Scrabble, where you get a bunch of letters. That was always an intellectual challenge for me. And then the other one was Rodents Revenge. The cats chase the rodents, and then the rodents turn around and chase the cats. And see
Sounds like Pac-Man.
It's a little bit more advanced than Pac-Man, but not a lot. And I went through a phase where I was kind of addicted to that, but then it went away. So I'm glad that we have you to inform our audience as to what it's all about. But I mean, the reason we went way deep into that rabbit hole a couple of episodes ago is because it had been said in one of the newspaper articles that poor Dylan Mortensen, who did have, an initial shock phase, and she was having survivor's guilt, that one of the ways that she was dealing with her survivor's guilt was by gaming and healing, and that gaming was healing. And I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist either, but I mean, whatever you can do to relax and escape, fine. As long as it's productive.
Say, yeah.
Word Womp. Well, yeah, I mean, they give you never heard of that one?
Well, no, I'm just saying, if you're playing Word Womp, if that's your gaming, you might be a little bit more chilled out than somebody playing League of Legends. I'm a fan. You have a good healthy gaming. You're a healthy gamer.
What they do is they give you a whole bunch of letters, and you've got to make as many words out of it as possible. And it's like I was always mad because I didn't get them all. I didn't get all the words, and so there was stress involved because I didn't get them all. And it's darn it, I didn't get that word. Darn it! Can I spell apple with only one P? No.
Everybody watching right now, if they're watching from a mobile phone, they almost have definitely seen and probably played Wordscapes and knows exactly what you're talking about right now.
I think they're similar. Yeah, I think they're similar. And there's another word game out there that I see people all the time on my Facebook. They say, I got a score of such and such. I'm like, yeah, fine. Okay.
I was like, love that for you.
Yeah. Anyhow, well, I guess it's time to say thanks, folks. Thank you very much for sticking with us if you've stuck with us this long. And if you have additional ideas for our future programming, please feel free to suggest them down in the comments. We do read all the comments, and as we pointed out before, we do get some hate. Please be respectful, be nice. We read them all, and as long as the pluses outnumber the minuses, we will keep going. Right?
Thank you guys so much. And I do want to say thank you if you made it this far to everybody watching, and thank you so much to the YouTubers out there loving and supporting our channel. Evil CJ, we saw you the other day live streaming, and that was awesome. And another, wonderful, positive person, and as well as Harsh Reality. So definitely, everybody, check out the other channels in the Crimosphere. And we appreciate everybody who shares and enjoys our content. So thank you guys so much.
Yep, check them out, but come back here. Have a good one. You have been watching About the Law, a production of the law offices of Andrew D. Myers in Methuen in the Merrimack Valley of Massachusetts, and in Derry, just outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. Remember to click the like and subscribe buttons down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to share it with your friends and others. If you'd like to talk to me about an injury case, a car accident, a slip and fall, a serious bodily injury case, or some other case, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to talk to you. You can contact us through my website at attorney-myers.com. We have a contact us block, or you can call on one of the telephone numbers we've given there, or you can email me at andrew@attorney-myers.com. The foregoing is offered for informational purposes only. It is not intended as and does not constitute legal advice. Laws vary widely from state to state. You should rely only on the advice given to you during a personal consultation by a local attorney thoroughly familiar with state laws and the area of practice in which your concern lies. This podcast must be and hereby is labeled advertisement in some jurisdictions.
Woo!
And